Welcome to Future Energy Insights, the podcast series that explores the future of sustainable innovation, brought to you by the World Future Energy Summit. For this episode, our focus is human-centric design in smart buildings. Smart is a well-used word, but technology is now beginning to reshape how we interact with our developed environments, be that a building, city, or a campus. I'm Rob Jones, partner at B2B Connect, and joining me for this episode, we have Hytham Ibrahim, Vice President of Operations for Brookfield Properties, and Jacinta Da Silva, Director of Research, Living Lab and International Partnerships at Sea Institute. In this episode, we'll explore how smart buildings will be increasingly expected to adapt to human needs, how technology is changing the occupant experience, the integration of AI and other advanced technologies into our environments, and the role of biophilic design on well-being in urban settings. Jacinta, I'll start with you and a scene-setting question. What defines for you a human-centric smart building, and why is it becoming so increasingly important?
An interesting question. Thank you so much for that. So when we talk about human-centric design, we look at the buildings and the way the world is going into the construction industry. We need to really focus on who lives in that. We need to evaluate how are the human elements integrated into the entire setup of the construction that's done in the built environment. So when we talk about the human-centric buildings, the things that come to my mind are, number one, the lighting. How do we have the natural lighting setup? If we look at the sustainable city, that was one of the main elements to look at how we can be energy efficient, while the humans living in the building are comfortable. So we made sure that there are certain levels of active and passive designs involved. So we have enough natural lighting coming into the house, so you do not have to waste too much of electricity. The second element is the air quality within the the rooms or the house that you are living. We know how big of a problem that is by itself. So when we look at air quality, that's another element that makes your life comfortable. It not only makes you comfortable as a person, but it also impacts your sleep, your health, your well-being. So that's another element that is important when human-centric elements are looked at in a building and a construction.
And Hytham, I mean, this is now starting to expand into campuses and city thinking as well. I mean, we're sitting right now in ICD Brookfield Place, and it's a big building, offices, but actually we're sitting in the summer garden, which has a very natural feel to it, even though we're surrounded by glass. So how do you see this starting to spread into whole communities and citywide?
So first of all, thank you so much, and allow me to welcoming you in our vibrant summer garden at ICD Brookfield Place. The human-centric buildings, smart buildings, I can simply define it that the building which is really and deeply taking care of our well-being and overall experience. Not only because people when they listen to smart building, they think directly of technology and digitalization, but actually it's a complete integration between the architectural design, the interior design, infrastructure from IT and different systems, and as well operational technologies which come at the end, which related to digitalization, which capturing what we talk about from human-centric and the interaction between the building and the human. Definitely on the wider city, to your question, we see a huge demand taking place for a human-centric smart buildings. I think that first of all, the fact is that we spend majority of our time indoor. And I can say it's a man-made controlled environment, and it's supposed to be a controlled environment for the benefit of our physical and mental health. If it's uncontrolled or not controlled properly, it's gonna harm us. So technically, having a human-centric building, which really taking care of our well-being and overall experience, it's not an option anymore.
Yeah.
We really need to deliver this, and there is a huge demand, and we see an expansion from all the levels, from developer requirements, from the consultant, how they are specifying the buildings, even the contractors and the entire supply chain. They are getting more and more with time diversified in order to be able to deliver such buildings which we are talking about.
And this is really starting now from, well, maybe even pre-design, but certainly from that planning stage, both in terms of the technologies that will help shape that design. And I think you're right in what you were saying, that it's not about technology dictating, it's how do you get them to get human needs and technology to work together. But it's starting from that design stage all the way through to post handover, and how do you keep that going? So for you, what are some of the main ways that we at least can monitor how that's happening?
I think at the starting of the journey, the vision should be clear for that building. What we really need to achieve finally from that building. Do we need traditional building, or we really need to deliver a building which will create an impact to the community and the people and the occupants which will be living in that building? When the vision is clear and the entire stakeholders in an integrative way during the design concept phase, they are able to work together to deliver, let's call it, intelligent building roadmap. And the intelligent building roadmap will capture a lot of items which we just discussed about. So from architectural design and IT infrastructure and etc., which I just mentioned, all of them, they need to work in one framework and then get cascaded during the design development, schematics, construction, testing, commissioning, delivery, until the moment you're gonna hand over your building, if it is for a third party to operate it within the supply chain, to hand it over in a way that they understand why you originally built that building, why I need to deliver, and how they are supposed to operate it. So it's a long journey. There are a lot of considerations that need to take place from different aspects, and all the stakeholders need to be under one umbrella in order to deliver that.
Yeah. And I guess, Jacinta, this is leading us towards an area that has been talked about quite a lot, and that is that of cognitive buildings. So where do you think we are on that journey?
Taking the point from what Haitham has just talked about, how the stakeholders come into picture and what do they understand about the buildings? How do they take that journey forward from where the construction has left, and the residents or the people have come in and lived? They need to understand the entire concept of that building. So before coming to the cognitive part of the building, I want to see the behavioral aspect of the people living in that specific space. I don't want to mention as a building or a campus or any other living space. When the sustainable city was constructed, this is what was the challenge, to explain to people how a regular construction is different than a sustainable city's construction. So there was a lot of behavioral change that came into perspective when we were talking to our new residents as to how is it different to live in this specific city compared to any other gated communities. So, for example, when we talked about behavioral change, we always believed in enabling sustainability in terms of waste management, for example. So sourcing at or segregating at site, so it becomes much more easier for the waste management companies to segregate the waste at their facilities, utilize it to sort of have a 360-degree approach to it, or circular economy as we call it now, to make sure that the waste doesn't land into landfill. So we made sure that our residents were very clear about, not only our residents, our nannies. So that's where our understanding was that the waste is generally segregated or handled by nannies, not mainly the owners of the house. So we had to do a session or regular sessions with nannies and helpers to make sure that they understand the segregation very well. We had bins which clearly labeled information for them so that they understood where it goes. That was number one. Number two was integration of solar panels. So that helped us to not only have the natural lights, but also had electricity or generated through their own solar panels on the rooftop. So that helps enabling that kind of a behavior. The outcome of that has been, now it's been 6 to 8 years that the sustainable city is standing in Dubai. Our residents almost pay little to almost none, sometimes in the winter, for their electricity bill. So that's the behavioral change that you might have noticed. Now, coming to very quickly on the cognitive side of the buildings, we look at, so C Institute is a very good example of how we have integrated the cognitive elements or the technology that we talked about on smart BMS, for example. That's how we evaluate what kind of energy requirement do we have, or the air quality, how is it maintained. So those are some of the examples of cognitive buildings that you see now at C Institute.
And I also, I mean, I've had a tour of sustainable city, and I know, you have the domes where plant or vegetables are grown, which the community can all use. They can take, they bring back, once they've used it, they bring back the pots and the earth. You have the wind towers as well to try and cool the local area, the stream running through. So there are a lot of other innovations, I think, that you're trying to introduce to just change the way people think. I've also seen you've got the big screen where you can see the energy used,
Yes.
the waste, etc.
Yes, the
I don't know
dashboard.
if you can tell us a
Sure.
little bit about that.
So going again to the backstory of that is that we that's more like a DNA for us. So we focus on 6 elements when we focus on sustainable built environment: food, energy, water, waste, mobility, and materials. So the example that you talked about, the 7 biodomes that we have, are one of the elements of food security and food production. So 2020, when we all were plagued by the pandemic, our residents were quite contained because they didn't have to go out of the community to bring their own food. For example, the food was grown within the community. So they had the salads, they had the tomatoes, they could grow strawberries and various other salads for themselves. So they were quite self-contained. And that kind of added more value to that specific place as to how residents not only just live within their house limits, but what can they do with the social spaces that are available for them. So as you rightly said, there are so many different elements. We talked about the active and passive design. We talked about the food. We looked at materials, which is another very important element. And Haitham also touched on how the supply chain or the value chain helps you make it more sustainable. So when the sustainable city was constructed, we could not secure all possible local materials to make it more sustainable, to reduce the embodied carbon. But when C Institute was constructed, we made sure that at least 70% of the materials that were utilized before construction or while the aesthetics was built, we made sure that the local materials were embedded. That reduced our carbon emissions, our embodied carbon, lesser than 26%. So we reduced that by 26%. Now with the technology, that is the smart building management system and all the other elements like the solar panels, we are working on reducing our operational carbons by 2030. So we'll be net zero by 2030.
Okay. And Haitham, for you, looking at the kind of innovations that are helping new thing, I'm almost hesitant to use the word smart because I do think it's a little bit of an overused word, but it's the easiest short description that I can think of. So for you, where do you see those innovations going to as well in the future?
Where it's going to, I think reaching the level of what you were just discussing about having a cognitive building, I think it's one of the ultimate goals that buildings can achieve. Specifically that you were required to deeply monitor the occupants' patterns and behaviors in order to be able, as you just said, to be able to influence them and change their behavior, or to understand their behavior, to have a building with a level of responsiveness which can adapt to their requirements. So a building which provides a full personalization for the occupant, like you have the facility in an easy way to control the temperature of your space, the fresh air, the indoor air quality, the lighting, and etc. And from responsiveness perspective, I can give an example on ICD Brookfield Place. So the vertical transportation, the lifting system on the tower, it's integrated with the access control, and both of them are under the destination control system and equipped with a machine learning neural engine. Technically, the system is looking at the pattern of when the people are coming and leaving in order to minimize as possible the travel time and the travel to destination time. So understanding all this in order to provide the tenant with the best experience related only to that point, this is one of the important goals that building need to start to look at in order to fulfill the satisfaction and the best experience to their occupants. There are a lot of other innovations and technologies can be utilized. I know that everyone, as you said, we're talking about AI, but definitely the use of AI or the use of AI agent specialized in certain domains, like an AI agent specialized in indoor air quality in order to monitor and modulate something in the building. I believe this is gonna be the next step. But the buildings need to consider a convergence of their network, for example. Long time back, we used to have every system hosted in the building on an individual network, so it wasn't easy for them to talk to each other. Now, with hosting everything on one unified convergent network, it is the integration and communication between different systems. You can introduce new use cases, equipping the building with central management platform, which has a machine learning and automatic fault detection. This is also one of the important points that buildings started to look at, and which we have here implemented at ICD Brookfield Place. The use of IoTs, okay, your infrastructure, once it's equipped with wireless access point covering majority of the parts, and I'm talking about even common parts, or we're talking about maybe have a core and shell like ICD Brookfield Place, where you will require to extend the use cases into the tenancy spaces, like integration with the leasable spaces by having smart meters covering the entire utilities consumption of each tenant, and this helps you definitely to achieve any objective you're putting to achieve net zero, like what we did here by committing achieving net zero carbon by 2030. So back to the IoTs, there is a lot of types where you can implement, maybe related to space controls from temperature, humidity, fresh air, monitoring extensively the indoor air quality of your building, up to there are some recent ideas which they call it the digital ceiling, where you can install a ceiling on top of the occupants, and it takes care, and it has a lot of sensors. It has temperature sensors, humidity, and etc., up to it's equipped with smart surveillance. So, and a smart surveillance system which is connected to an AI agent, it can easily monitor your body movement. Are you not comfortable? In addition to that, you can extend it to integration between your wearables, like your smartwatch, to the building.
So are we at that point?
No,
or are we moving towards that point?
This is on our way. We're gonna reach to that, and I'm sure there are a lot of buildings worldwide. They are trying to achieve this, and some of them had and achieved already several of these implementations successfully.
So, I mean, it sounds amazing being able to really have a building start to understand, as an occupant, your requirements, having the easy one, having the lift near you when you're trying to use it, rather than having to wait ages, which is a fairly common problem here in Dubai, waiting a long time for a lift. The indoor air quality, I think, as well, is an important area. for a new building where you're building that with those in mind, that feels like you can prepare. What about the retrofitting side? Can the old buildings be retrofitted to start to have some of this technology in place?
I think the era of retrofitting is going heavily because we are extensively looking at decarbonizing our buildings, and decarbonization of the building will require you to look at how you are managing your energy. One of the challenges, it might be any infrastructure, physical infrastructure within the building, like IT infrastructure or a network of the air conditioning system, ducting system, and etc. Uh, the easiest point and the low-hanging fruit is the replacement of the equipment themselves. And many of the new equipment are coming equipped with, I guess, a mini brain in order to optimize its energy consumption. The retrofitting, if I'm talking about core and shell building, definitely there are a lot of implementation within the leasable spaces that the tenants can implement in retrofitting their spaces, aside from what's happening on the base building systems themselves.
Yeah, because that demand side management is becoming an increasing concern, I think, for utilities as well, in terms of understanding, partly because of AI and the fact that AI is so much more energy hungry, partly because of the huge growth in data and therefore data centers. All of that is starting to occupy minds of how do we deliver energy efficiently, but also then how do we make sure that buildings and occupants use it efficiently, and that's something that you're also looking at.
Yeah, one of the important point, and I think it's came to the top of our mind that we really need to focus on is the indoor air quality. So retrofitting your infrastructure by having systems starting from the equipment themselves, which capable to apply a filtration level to the fresh air and the circulation and filtration of the circulated air within the building themselves. Your ability to install IoTs and sensors in the building in order to look at several parameters within the air, which might not be, we're sitting few hours now in the building, but the fact is that there are a lot of things within the air on the long term will affect you negatively. So if you're not considering taking care of such elements and really control it to the occupants, we will not be able to provide them with a top-notch indoor air quality. And using the technology or any type of retrofitting the existing, let's say, traditional BMS system with an advanced intelligence system will allow you to adapt and to modulate your systems as per the requirements.
Jacinta, thank you. Jacinta, you talked a little bit about some of the community engagement and also how that influences interaction between people. I think that that's going to become increasingly important and something that people consider more and more. But with that, are there ethical concerns that have to be taken into account when you're looking at either a building or a wider community?
Yeah, I mean, that's something that we've been working on as well. Like, for example, coming from research background, that's definitely a concern where a lot of technology is coming into our lives, and we do not know where those hidden cameras are. We don't know what kind of monitoring is happening at all times in our life. So that's definitely a concern that I see that's being propped up most of the times when we discuss about smart buildings or looking into implementing any technological aspects into or around our community. So the best way, of course, is to create awareness, but of course we need to build a lot of ethical guidelines around what kind of data is being collected and how involved the community is when we are kind of collecting this kind of information. So it's always a recommendation that we work within the boundaries that are set by the community, not only the community but the country. So if we go back to the UK, we have the GDPR system where we follow the entire process of what kind of data has been collected. So I think we are bringing that kind of integration here in the UAE as well. You spoke about the demand side management. We had a very interesting roundtable with the Dubai Supreme Council of Energy, and that was one of the concerns that were quite highlighted during the discussion. And both the city level people as well as the operational level representatives highlighted as to how they are focusing on the corporate governance. They are not only looking at the fancy elements of adding smart technologies, but they're also very concerned about how vary the people living over there are when it comes to them being monitored at all times. So I believe there's a lot of progression that's happening in terms of policy development at this point of time. If we look at all these certifications and standardizations that are coming into place, these are also, again, setting up certain mandates for developers, for architects, designers, and all of them, to make sure that, we are not really invading privacy for people, but we're making sure that the technology installed around is making their life more comfortable, convenient, and improves their health and well-being in that particular
So
space.
creating awareness as well, I
Indeed,
guess.
Indeed. At all times, it's all about talking to your value chain, so the upstream as well as the downstream. So connecting with them, explaining to them as to why this data has been collected, how is it going to be utilized, how is it going to be stored in the future, what is the outcome of that particular information that I've collected. So, for example, last year we did a very interesting study in the community. We wanted to see sustainable living among Gen Zs and millennials. That was a very interesting study. But again, a lot of them came back to us and asked us as to how are you going to utilize this study? What will be the outcome of the study? Are you going to utilize our names, our data, the personal data? And we had to be giving them very clear instructions on the participant information sheet. We got their consent saying that we'll be storing this information in a very secured place and utilizing it only as grouped data. So we are not going to utilize any personal information as such. So that really helps them to be more confident in sharing the data that will help us as not only researchers, but also the developers to plan all those elements that are required to make human-centric designs, if I may say.
Yeah, and I mean, at a guess, I would think that, slightly older generations, I put myself there as well, we're probably slightly more suspicious of some of this data collection, how it's going to be used, where it's going to be, than maybe the generations that have just grown up with data everywhere, with smartphones, with interaction that we didn't have when we were younger. That must be hard.
That is quite a challenge with generation that we are dealing with in the sustainable city at the moment. But I believe there has been a good level of awareness that has been created. Secondly, I can see that the government, the UAE government, is quite supportive as well as receptive to ideas that are generated through these discussions and collaborations. Like, as I said, we had collaborations with Dubai Supreme Council of Energy, Ministry of Education. So these kind of collaborations help us create that kind of awareness on how data collection has become quite important for us to make lives much more comfortable going forward. So it does create a little bit of a question mark at the beginning, but when slowly and gradually they understand that this data has been handled in a very well mannered pattern, then we do not get kind of situations of that kind.
And Hytham, is it different? Because Sustainable City is mainly a community, a living community with some businesses. For you, it's, I guess, mainly businesses and multiple companies occupying. What are the sort of challenges that you're facing to make sure that you have that sustainability in mind, that you're reaching? You said 2030 for net zero, but you have companies that are at all different levels in terms of their preparedness and their attitudes as well. That must be quite a challenge for you.
One of the ethical points we need to consider, you touched on, is that we need to provide these systems or these smart systems for the occupants in a way that's accessible by all. I need to consider my occupants, how old they are. So as you just said, there are some people, they might be resistive to use some type of technologies, to download an app and to do a registration and to start to interact with the building through a very advanced system or through a very advanced system. So definitely this is something on the how intuitive technologies and user interface you are providing to your occupants. This is very important that we really need to consider with the occupants that way. One more point to deliver to the occupants, the outcome which they are expecting and we wanted to do, is to consider one important fact. The using the AI or machine learning or any type of algorithm technologies, there is a bias on that. You are collecting a lot of data. You might not be every time collecting the same parameters, all of them, in order to fit into an equation, or you might be collecting some of them inaccurately due to sensor error or some issues on the system. So the system might be biased sometimes because of either your algorithm is incomplete or you are missing some inputs. So from occupant's perspective, I'm expecting that the building every time to provide me with what I really need. But it's a journey and we are taking it and we are learning from it as well.
And that's a key risk, isn't it? Bias within data that then affects negatively decision making.
100%. There are a lot of risks of what we are trying to implement. Since we started to talk, we are implementing a heavy and very advanced technologies and implementation which interacts or intended to interact and affect human. One risk definitely is the algorithm bias. So the more the AI and machine learning neural engines they are get with time with the building, for example, they will get to more accurate than deviating from what is the expectations needed. The other risks which we really see is the creativity of people. With time, people who are operating the buildings, they will start. There is another brain taking a decision on their behalf.
Yeah.
So with time, they might lose the creativity, and this, I can say it imposes operational resilience risk on the buildings, because in case you have a major incident or a crisis and the system is down, you need the people to start to interact and take the action and recover your situation. And with time, by depending more on this technology, you will be weakening that point. So that's why we need always to make sure that this risk is being mitigated by continuously training the people and training them on different scenarios and etc. One more risk I can easily identify the over standardization. So with time, you will start to see consultants, they are just putting, we need a building with AI, we need a building with machine learning, we need. So technically, when it comes to the supply chain, there is a lot of specifications need to get delivered, and you will find gap within the contractor or the vendors in order to be able to deliver this to you. There will be a time where this gap gonna be there, and it will get closed with time. So.
And it's interesting because a really simple example of what you were saying there about how people become reliant on different forms of technology. Yesterday, all the lifts in my building stopped working. Now, I only needed to go up one flight of stairs at that particular point. Although I work high in the building, on that point I was on the ground floor and I needed to only go up one flight. And I realized I had no idea where the stairs are, because even though I've worked in that building for a year, I'd never had to think about it before. And I was like, actually, this is dangerous. I should know where the stairs are.
Yep. And if you examine your life now and test to stop anything related to technology you're using, or force it to get stopped, turn off your mobile for 6 hours, and try to make everything in your life going smoothly. The fact is we heavily depending on the technologies, and definitely the sudden stoppage of any of these elements, definitely it will affect our life.
Indeed. So let's turn briefly to biophilic design and how that's influencing, because we're sitting, as we said, we're sitting in the summer garden. We're surrounded by trees right now. Obviously, that has to be helping with indoor air quality. I'm guessing that's part of the reason why ICD Brookfield has these all these plants and trees in it. So, how are biophilic design principles starting to shape thinking and shape design of future buildings? And I'll ask that to both of you, but Jacinta, I'll go to you first.
So when we talk about biophilia, it does really add value when we look at the E part of the sustainability, the environment element that we incorporate into the design part of buildings or construction. It not only enhances the aesthetics of the building, but it also adds value to the people living in that particular place by contributing to their health and well-being. It reduces a lot of carbon emissions, so that again enhances the well-being of the people. The environment definitely contributes to the support for an individual. So when we talk about going back to the examples of a sustainable city, or if we look at Masdar city, or these are some of the examples where they are incorporating biophilia into their design. For example, I look at two PhD students who are working on something called as hydroponic and aquaponics into the built environment sector already. So they are looking at how both these elements, hydroponic and aquaponics, are helping the livability of people in that specific space. They're also experimenting on how they can have them within the living area and how that's going to help them live in a better manner to reduce the indoor air quality issues, but also have much more green spaces within the community, inside the homes as well as outside the community. So the best examples is that helps us to do a lot more outdoor activities. So you don't have to live within your house, but if we have designs like these, then there's a lot more the well-being element that's taken care of by the developers, and that helps us to enhance our health portion as well.
And livability, I think, is the key word, actually, isn't it?
It is.
And workability, I suppose, in an office environment.
Yeah, it is. If we look around us, we're having the podcast here in the summer garden. You'll find another people having formal meeting on the back, people just catching up after finishing their gym in the building. And this civic space, our summer garden, is a complete life. You will find in every corner there is something to do. And we find there is a huge an increasing demand from our occupants, and I'm not saying occupants only within ICD Brookfield Place. It is even from the surrounding areas. I know people, they are not within the IFC area, and they meet in the summer garden of ICD Brookfield Place. The maximized natural light, the greeneries around you, the very, very well controlled indoor quality, the availability of continuous and more than the standard fresh air provided into the summer garden. The capability of the summer garden, when we have on the winter season, we open the bifolding doors, so you have a direct connection into the community outside. All these aspects, it's creating a more and more demand from the occupants. Last year, we ran a study and a survey with our occupants to see what are the possible ways to increase the seating capacity within the summer garden. What is the best configuration in order to increase the number of seats within the area, because we reached to a point that it's always full, and the people keep on demanding that we need to utilize the summer garden. It's one of the best elements which within the building, which it really contributes positively to your physical and mental health while you are on your 8 or 9 hours supposed to be work at an office.
That's a very interesting point. That's true. Uh, Going back to the example of sustainable city, I love the area that's designed, because within the plaza, like you said, you open up the space during the winter. If we look at our area in the plaza, you will see children playing around without the interference of any cars, and parents sipping coffees around without any worries that the children are going to be squashed by any cars around. So that's a nice environment, along with enjoying the nature outside with great lighting and the green spaces. So that just adds on to, again, the livability and workability elements as well.
But I think one of the things that we're seeing in this region is we have incredibly hot summers. It can get very dusty, very humid, but people need to find a way of being able to connect with each other, with nature, etc. And I guess what these kind of ideas do is bring out that ingenuity, finding ways of taking the environment in which we live, but still offering maybe some of the benefits that you get in cooler climates, I think.
Yeah, and just to let you know that the biophilic design and the importance of the human connection with nature is not only taking care within the buildings. Now, if you look at the pillars within the delivering a smart city itself, the elements related to landscaping, the existence of water bodies and water features, definitely a biophilic design, either indoor or outdoor, it's super important for the well-being and productivity and the quality of our lives. Yeah.
Okay.
Yes, absolutely. Yeah, I mean, if we go back to our own home countries, and like what we talked about, the childhood that we spent within the nature, that's some of the challenges the younger kids are facing these days. If we're living in a controlled environment like this, where the temperatures are a bigger challenge, and environments or spaces like these definitely add value, because then they get their space, the childhood, to enjoy with the nature, with certain boundaries, of course. But designs like these will help nurture their childhood and their future in a far better manner, I would say.
Jacinta, Hytham, thank you for joining us on Future Energy Insights, a podcast brought to you by the World Future Energy Summit.